Sign it. It's good for you and the whole class. Class teacher David pushed the statement refusing the top university recommendation letter in front of me, his tone leaving no room for doubt. His fingers tapped on the desk, producing a dull sound. Eva, the class monitor standing beside him, was staring intently at the pen handed to me, her eyes flashing with uncontrollable excitement. I watched this familiar scene, and I could almost feel the air's sticky heat on my fingertips. It was the eve of the final mobilization meeting in the last term of senior year. In my past life I had signed under pressure and temptation, handing the reserved spot back to the so-called privileged class, only to receive endless cold shoulder abuse from the whole class led by Eva. And now, I'm back. I didn't take the pen. Instead, I reached out and picked up the statement. David's mouth had just curved into a satisfied smile, but in the next second, his smile froze on his face. Click. I exerted both hands, in front of them both, tearing the statement stamped with the school seal in half, then quarters, then eighths. White paper fragments floated and swirled under the office's fluorescent lights, finally all falling into the wastebasket beside them. You're crazy, Eva screamed, her voice sharp and distorted by extreme fear. David slammed his fist on the desk, his face turning ashen, pointing at my nose and yelling, "What is this attitude? If you don't obey the class's overall interests, do you think you can behave as you please just because you have good grades? If you don't sign today, not only will you lose your reserved spot, I can at any time record you a major demerit, making it impossible for you even to take the college entrance exam." I didn't say a word. Under their furious and shocked stares, I calmly pulled up my phone from my school uniform pocket and pressed the stop recording button on the screen. Then I opened a local news live platform on my phone and uploaded the just recorded audio along with the already prepared bank transfer screenshots showing Eva's father transferring $300,000 to David's account, packaged and sent. That was the evidence I had spent my whole life searching for in my past life. And in this life, I had already uncovered all their dirty deals in advance. What are you doing with the phone? David realized something was wrong, stretching his neck to look at my screen. I turned the phone toward him. The screen clearly displayed video and audio attachments uploaded successfully, entering the manual review expedited channel. David's face instantly turned pale, veins throbbing on his forehead. He made a move to leap over the desk to grab my phone, and I stepped back deftly, pulling the office door wide open. The hallway at this moment was crowded with the entire class preparing to head to the auditorium for the mobilization meeting. Hearing the commotion, dozens of eyes immediately fixed on the office door. "Eva, Teacher David says if I don't give you the reserved spot, I'll be given a major demerit, keeping me from taking the college entrance exam." I stood in the center of the hallway, in a low voice, yet every word was clear, ensuring everyone present could hear it distinctly. The surrounding students immediately began to murmur in subdued whispers. Eva, dragging her skirt, rushed out of the office with a face full of feigned distress and anger. "You're lying through your teeth. It's obviously your own lack of ability that caused you to give up willingly. Don't listen to him nonsense." Everyone, some of Eva's usual lackeys in the crowd, immediately started to echo. "Exactly, the whole class knows that the head girl's family collaborates with the school. Why would they need to snatch yours? He's just out of his mind wanting to show off." I did not argue, but simply watched Eva quietly. At that moment, a loud interference from the loudspeakers on the top floor of the teaching building suddenly erupted, followed by a clear voice that resounded across the entire campus. "Sign the document for you and for the whole class. If you don't sign today, not only will you lose your guaranteed placement, I can at any time mark you with a major demerit, preventing you from even taking the college entrance exam." That was the exact words David had just spoken in the office, using the Bluetooth audio receiver I had secretly linked to the school radio stations backstage. This conversation was being broadcast live to more than 2,000 teachers and students across the campus. The room fell silent. All the taunts and whispers stopped abruptly at that moment. Eva's face drained of color, and she slumped against the hallway wall. David burst out of the office, stumbling, clutching a walkie-talkie and shouting frantically, "Cut the broadcast! Cut the broadcast now!" But it was already too late. A sharp siren wailed from outside the school gate. Approaching, two vehicles bearing the logos of the Education Inspection and the Economic Investigation Bureau pulled up directly beneath the teaching building. Several uniformed staff members pushed through the onlookers and walked straight to David and Eva. "David, is that you?" Someone has reported that you accepted a substantial bribe in the National University Placement Quota selection and manipulated the exam results. Please come with us. The lead staff member produced their credentials. Then another worker looked at Eva, whose face was as pale as a sheet. Eva. According to the preliminary investigation, your candidate for the guaranteed placement has been formally cancelled by the Education Bureau. At the same time, given your involvement in a major cheating case, please assist us with the investigation. Under the stunned gaze of the entire class, David and Eva were both escorted into a police car. After David was taken away for questioning, the homeroom teacher position for Class 1 was temporarily taken over by the year director. It was believed that Eva's downfall would wake up the group in the class who were accustomed to praise and trample. But reality proved that the breeding ground for malice would never stop operating just because one person was gone. During Monday's early self-study, the study committee member Fiona walked into the classroom in high-heeled shoes. She did not go to her seat but stood on the podium directly. She slapped the desk hard, causing a thick stack of forms to bang and rustle. Everyone, quiet down. Listen to an urgent notice. Fiona leaned on the podium with both hands, sweeping her gaze across the room, finally locking precisely onto me in the back row. For this citywide joint mock exam, in order to improve the rate of admission to key universities, the school has arranged for us to obtain a set of advanced exam questions from an outside top-tier teaching and research institution. However, because this is a supplementary exam, each person must pay $500 for the exam papers and the marking fees. There are 45 students in the class, totaling $22,500. It must be submitted before the first class after lunch. The students below erupted in a stir, and many began to complain in whispers. $500. That's so expensive. Almost as much as half a month's worth of meals. Yeah, we just paid the data fee last week. Why pay again? Hearing the complaints, Fiona frowned and slapped the podium again, raising her voice. What are you shouting about? This is for everyone's future. Don't you want to get into a good university? Also, to take care of the classmates in our class who are financially strapped, and to reflect our Class 1's collective honor, I propose that this fee be paid by our class's top student. After all, he just won a national competition first prize and won tens of thousands in prize money. This amount of money is nothing to him. With her words, the class's eyes all fixed on me in unison. A few girls who usually got along well with Fiona immediately echoed loudly from the back. Yes. He won so much prize money, he can't spend it all alone. Why not cover everyone's share? We're all in the same class. If we all get into prestigious schools later, we'll all be connected. If you don't lend a hand now, you're too selfish. Fiona looked at me, a smug, determined smile on her face. She stepped down from the podium and directly tossed the payment form onto my desk, handing me a neutral pen at the same time. Sign it. The talented one. The future of the whole class is now in your hands. One word from you and everyone can immediately get the top-tier review materials. Fiona looked down on me, her tone dripping with practiced moral coercion. I looked at the form on the desk, which had already printed the names of everyone in the class, and the payers column boldly bore my name. I did not take the pen. I just stretched out my hand, clutched the edge of the form, and, in front of Fiona, slowly crumpled it into a ball. What the hell are you doing? Fiona's face instantly changed. I'm not signing. I released my grip. The paper ball rolled to the floor, stopping at her feet. If you want to take the exam, you pay yourself. How I spend my prize has nothing to do with you. The classroom exploded with chatter. How could you do that? So cold-blooded. Earning so much money. You can't even spare $500 for your classmates. What a waste of such good grades. If it weren't for us staying with you through the exams, could you have taken first? You selfish person. Faced with a flood of accusations and curses from the whole class, I didn't even bother to lift my eyelids. I stood up, picked up my phone, and walked straight out of the classroom. Fiona shouted after me unrelentingly, "Not paying." Ha, fine. Today, because of you alone, the whole class won't be able to obtain this set of advanced exam papers. If the Gauco ends up widening the gap among us, you'll be the culprit for the entire class. I ignored the clamor behind me and walked straight to the vice principal's office. Before knocking, I logged into the school's anonymous complaint mailbox on my phone and sent a package containing screenshots of my late-night chats from yesterday between the school printer backend, Fiona, and the head of an external organization, all packed together. In my former life, Fiona used this tactic to extort the whole class for countless material fees. Later I learned that her mother was the financial partner of that external tutoring institution. This more than $20,000 exam fee. At least half of it would go directly into Fiona's own bank card as a kickback. 2 minutes later, I knocked on the door to the vice principal's office. Half an hour later, while Fiona in the classroom was spewing venom and inciting the entire class to isolate me, the classroom door was kicked open forcefully. The vice principal stood in the doorway with a cold, iron face, followed by 2 school discipline inspectors in uniform. "Fiona, come out." The vice principal's voice was as cold as ice. Fiona hesitated, then a smile spread across her face. "Principal, I'm just discussing with the students about the mock exam, discussing how to take the kickbacks." The vice principal dropped a stack of printed chat records and bank transfer details onto the podium. The records clearly showed that each 500 exam actually cost only $50. The remaining $450 was all returned to Fiona in batches via message transfers by the tutoring institution, illegally colluding with an external institution, using the school's name to charge students exorbitant fees, and even embezzling funds. "Fiona, you're bold." The vice principal's words plunged the class into a dead silence. A few students who had been defending Fiona earlier were now pale with fear, quickly bowing their heads. Fiona looked at the evidence on the podium. As if struck by lightning, she trembled and tried to explain. "No. It's not like this, Principal. I did this for everyone. Your parents will be notified." The vice principal did not give her a chance to argue, given the substantial amount involved and the malicious nature. "The school has decided to place you on leave for a period and immediately remove you from the post of class monitor. If your parents refuse to return all illicit gains, the school will directly hand the matter to judicial authorities." 2 inspectors moved forward, directly taking off Fiona's school badge from her chest and ordering her to pack up and leave the classroom immediately. Fiona broke down in tears and collapsed on the floor. Under the terrified, angry, and complicated gazes of the whole class, she was dragged out of the teaching building. The students who had just been verbally attacking me earlier now hid their faces low, not daring to meet my eyes. After Fiona was disciplined, the loud moral blackmail in the class instantly faded. But as long as the benefits are big enough, someone will take the risk. There are 3 days left until the nationwide Youth Science and Technology Innovation Competition submission deadline. This competition is extremely prestigious. Winning first prize not only comes with a hefty prize but also qualifies for reduced admission scores to key universities in the Gaokao. The whole class pulls out every trick for this spot, and my desk mate George has lately been unusually attentive to me. "Have you eaten breakfast? I brought you a sandwich." George placed a delicate breakfast at the corner of my desk, his face wearing an enthusiastic smile. "By the way, how's your multimodal data encryption algorithm project coming along? Do you need me to run some test data for you?" I glanced at his hands that were trembling slightly from nerves, looked away, and spoke calmly. "We've entered the final packaging stage. This afternoon I will temporarily store the complete source code on the main hard drive of the computer at my seat for the final system integration." "Is that so? That's great. This time first prize must be yours." George smiled and patted my shoulder, but a trace of uncontrollable ecstasy flashed in the depths of his eyes. What he doesn't know is that I deliberately let him hear this. In the previous life, on the day before this deadline, George took advantage of me being temporarily summoned to the former homeroom teacher's office. Using an encryption USB drive already prepared to secretly copy the core source code I had spent 6 months developing, he overnight modified the UI and authorship, and submitted to the competition organizers first. By the time I found out, he had already earned a reduced score spot with my hard work, because he registered the code submission time first. I became the thief accused by the whole school for plagiarism. This time, history will not repeat. At 2 in the afternoon, according to plan, I imported a source file named Core Encrypt Final, SRC, into the desktop development environment. Then I deliberately left my phone on the desk and went to the restroom. In front of the mirror in the teaching building's restroom, I checked the time on my watch. 2 minutes enough for a flustered thief to complete the copy. When I returned to the classroom in due course, George sat upright at his seat, frantically scribbling meaningless formulas on a scrap of paper. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead, and even the breeze I brought when I sat down made him shudder. I glanced at the computer screen. In the hidden access logs beneath the source code, There was a clear record of a red command generated a minute ago from an external portable storage device. George had taken the bait, but he would never expect that within that so-called core source code, I had already planted a fatal logical bomb. The underlying architecture of that algorithm may look tight and run smoothly, but as soon as the underlying core data package is called more than 3 times, it will instantaneously trigger an irreversible logic dead loop. Not only will the system completely crash, but it will also activate the open-source copyright protection protocol I had pre-registered on GitHub, automatically sending a copyright infringement alert across the entire internet. 3 days later, the provincial offline judging for the Science and Technology Innovation Competition was held grandly in our school's auditorium. Experts from the Provincial Department of Education, professors from universities, and all the teachers and students from the campus gathered. George, in a sharp suit, stood proudly in the backstage area. As the host's announcement began, he puffed out his chest and walked confidently onto the podium. Judges, teachers, today I bring you a project titled High Energy Encryption System based on multimodal data. George's voice, amplified by the microphone, filled the entire auditorium. In the audience, the students of Class 1 whispered in astonishment, "Oh my God! George can actually write algorithms of this level." You can't tell from his usual demeanor, but now he's definitely going to blow away the competition and drop the scores. On the podium, George skillfully opened the demonstration system and began inputting the first 2 sets of test data. On the large screen, the system responded quickly, the encrypted results generated in an instant, and a wave of enthusiastic applause broke out from the audience. The pride on George's face was obvious. He glanced at me sitting in the audience, his eyes full of the taunt of a victor. Then, with maximum confidence, he entered the 3rd set, also the final set, of core demonstration data into the chat box. Next, I will demonstrate the system's most core concurrent encryption capability. He pressed enter with force. At that moment, the progress bar on the big screen suddenly froze at 99. The room sound dropped to almost silence. George's smile stiffened, and he frantically hammered at the keyboard, but the screen gave no response. 3 seconds later, the originally simple demonstration interface suddenly went dark, and countless lines of blood-red error codes blasted across the screen like a waterfall. What is happening? George panicked, his voice trembling. Before he could cut the power, a sharp alarm sounded from the hall's huge speakers. Then, a large, all-English copyright warning pop-up appeared in the center of the screen. Warning: unorganized use of copyrighted code detected. This line clearly shows that the ownership of the project belongs to the code publisher Alpha 2026, and this computer on site is the thief's. The entire venue erupted in an uproar. A few veteran professors on the judging panel frowned sternly. The lead judge abruptly stood up, grabbed the microphone, and sternly asked, "Student George, please explain why your original project triggers the open-source copyright protection protocol. Why does the core algorithm you mentioned crash when called a 3rd time due to a plagiarism conflict?" "No, it's not like that. This code is mine. The system made a mistake." George's face turned pale, cold sweat pouring down. He rambled on the stage, even trying to unplug the network cable. "Enough." The lead judge waved his hand to signal the security to come up onto the stage. "The most forbidden thing in a technology innovation contest is academic plagiarism. Immediately cancel Class 1 George's participation and report it to the Prof. Ints. And record it in his personal integrity file." 2 security guards strode onto the stage, lifting the limp and screaming George, and with the scornful gazes of the entire school, dragged him off the podium. After George was recorded in the integrity file, the mood in the class plummeted to the extreme. To dispel the creeping fear I felt, the sports committee member Harry suddenly blocked my desk with a group of people after Friday class. He had an unlit cigarette clenched in his mouth, both hands propped on the desk, looking down on me with a superior air. "Things before, there were misunderstandings. Tonight we've booked a private room at Xingshi Houting in the city center, and the whole class is going." Harry, with a wry smile that didn't reach his eyes, patted my shoulder with surprising force, as if to demonstrate power. "If there's anything I owe you, tonight we'll drink a cup of reconciliation wine, and this will be in the past. Genius. You won't refuse to give the whole class face, will you?" Behind him, several boys who typically hung around the sports team immediately closed in, subtly sealing off my retreat. The whole class also looked over, their eyes filled with tacit, cold indifference. In my previous life, it was also this so-called reconciliation banquet. They forced me to drink spiked alcohol with moral coercion and peer pressure. When I was drunk and unable to think clearly, Harry coaxed me into signing a confession that admitted I bullied others and isolated classmates, and took a video of it to the campus network, completely destroying my reputation. All right, I'll go. I met Harry's gaze and answered calmly. Harry froze for a moment, apparently not expecting my reply to be so decisive, then let out a mocking snort. Fine. Have some guts. 8 o'clock tonight. Don't be late. At 7:50 p.m. I arrived on time at the door of the deluxe private room on the 3rd floor of Xingshi. Before I even pushed the door, the deafening music and voices urging drinks inside hit my ears. I pushed the door open and stepped in. The private room was smoky, with tables laid out with all kinds of high-end liquors and beers. More than 30 classmates were having a wild time. Not at all like a group of third-year students facing the Gaokao. Seeing me come in, Harry's eyes lit up, and he immediately turned down the music. He hugged 2 socially unscrupulous youths and walked over, pouring a full glass of whiskey and slamming it down on the table with a thud. Come on, genius. You're on time. Everyone, give him a round of applause. Harry led the cheer, and the whole class burst into sneering laughter. We won't talk about the past. Drink this cup, and all old scores will be wiped clean. If you don't drink, you're looking down on all of us in Class 1. A few girls nearby joined in with cold sarcasm. Yeah, Harry paid for this yourself. Don't show off and be ungrateful. It's just a drink. Why pretend to be aloof? I looked at the cup of liquid that reeked of alcohol, and my gaze swept over Harry and the faces of those social youths. Their eyes glittered with vicious excitement, and their hands were already reaching for their pockets to grab their phones, ready to record my embarrassment at any moment. I did not lift the wine cup. I stepped back instead, reached out, and pressed the wall switch to turn off the private room lights. With a crack, the originally dim, intimate ambience lights went out, and the harsh fluorescent lights lit up every corner of the room. What the hell are you doing? Getting beaten up, are you? One of Harry's social friends changed his expression on the spot, grabbing a wine bottle and stepping forward. Before he could reach me, the private room door was kicked open from the outside. Police, hands on your heads, get down, do not move. Several uniformed officers and inspectors from the Market Regulation Bureau poured in, filling the narrow room. The previously arrogant athletes and social youths, upon seeing the police, scared themselves into dropping the wine bottles all over the floor. Who is Harry? The lead detective asked in a stern voice. Harry's face turned pale, and he trembled as he raised his hand. I am a police officer. We were just at a classmates' gathering. We didn't do anything illegal. Class reunion, the police officer sneered, pointing at the table full of wine bottles and the pervasive smoke. We received a tip that someone here is induction and forcing minors to drink, and is suspected of gathering crowds to cause trouble. Moreover, we received a real-name whistleblower letter. Your father, as the major shareholder of this prosperous manor, is suspected of long-term use of entertainment venues to launder money illegally and evade taxes. This is a search warrant. The market regulation inspectors walked onto the stage directly, slamming a stack of sealing seals onto the table. Hearing the words money laundering and tax evasion, Harry felt as if struck by lightning. His legs went weak and he sank to the ground. His father's industry was the only capital he relied on to dominate at school. He never expected that a single mediation wine deal would reveal such a monstrous catastrophe of his own family. He didn't know that in his previous life his father's company would crash only 3 years later. In this life, I had already, through memories of the past life, pre-collected the core ledgers showing how they used high-end private rooms to issue fake invoices and hide revenue. And before tonight's departure I packed and sent them to the City Bureau's Economic Investigation Unit and the Tax Bureau. And you all, take them back to the Bureau for a urine test, and notify the school and parents to come claim them. The police pointed at the terrified classmates in the private room, who were wailing and crying. No, don't. I still want to take the college entrance exam. I can't have a criminal record. Police officers, this is all Harry forcing us to come here. We didn't do anything. The classmates who had just been harsh to me moments ago now cried and shifted blame, their ugliness on full display, in the despairing cries of the entire class. Harry and the few young men involved were cuffed with cold handcuffs, dragged out of the private room like dead dogs. More than 30 students in the class were lined up, and under the scornful and gawking eyes of countless casinogoers, they were humiliated and escorted into a police car. I stood in the corridor outside the private room. Watching this coldly, the team leader walked over and patted my shoulder. "Young student, thank you for your assistance. The tip-off documents are very solid. You can go home now." "Thank you, officer." I adjusted the strap of my backpack, and, under the terrified and resentful gazes of my classmates, walked calmly out of the casino. After being brought back from the police station by my parents, the looks my entire class gave me completely changed. It wasn't respect, but extreme hatred mixed with helpless, furious resentment. They didn't dare to provoke Mephisto face anymore, so they redirected all their grievances into a cold shoulder bullying and online harassment sparked by the school bell Grace. With only 1 month left before the college entrance exam, on the eve of the final school-wide mock exam, Grace walked into the classroom with a stack of review materials. She wore a meticulously tailored school uniform, her face wearing a gentle yet false smile. She didn't hand out the materials. Instead, she directly uploaded a jointly signed electronic petition to the class chat group. "Classmates, given that some people are psychologically dark and ruthless, I have reason to suspect that the exclusive high exam prediction papers he shared with the class contain flaws." Grace stood on the podium, her voice soft but piercing. "I specifically consulted senior experts from the Municipal Teaching and Research Group, who said those questions are extremely unorthodox in their thinking, designed to mislead everyone. He intends to ruin all of us at the last moment, so that he can stay at the top province-wide. Therefore I propose that everyone in Class 1 unitedly resist his poisonous questions and demand that he publicly apologize." As Grace finished speaking, the class chat exploded with replies. "Resist. I've long suspected he isn't acting in good faith. The intent is so malicious. Putting traps in revision materials inhuman. Grace really saved our lives. We almost got dragged into this by that selfish guy." Next, my desk began to attract stickers with insulting words. On the school's anonymous forum, countless accounts registered by Class 1 students started posting wildly, spreading the rumor that the top student, in order to fight for first place, deliberately created toxic questions to harm the whole class. The posts attracted thousands of hostile responses in the comments. At noon break, Grace, with more than 30 classmates, slammed a sheet printed with a petition stamped with red handprints in front of me. "Sign it to confirm. From now on your materials won't be looked at by Class 1. Put away your venomous hypocrisy." Grace looked down on me, her eyes full of the satisfaction of a plan being carried out. I looked at that so-called petition on the desk, and then at the furious and smug faces around me. The materials were the core question types I distilled after 3 all-nighters from real memories of the previous life's college entrance exam, meant to be fully mastered so the class average could rise by at least 30 points. Since they had cut off this path for themselves, I naturally didn't mind giving them a push. "Okay." I didn't say a word more. In front of them, I took out a signature pen and signed my name at the bottom of the petition. Then I deleted all the backups of the predicted papers from my computer, and threw both the printed and digital versions into the trash can on the spot. Grace let out a cold laugh, and with the whole class, turned around like victorious generals, walking away proudly. What they didn't know was that the moment they turned and left the classroom, I pulled out my phone and dialed the head of grade 3 at the city's #1 private high school, the Utsai High School. "Teacher Lee. Hello, the set of high exam prediction mother papers you mentioned before. I'm willing to grant exclusive rights to your school. The only condition is a closed book mock exam for the whole school tonight. In my previous life, Utsai High School lacked precise predictive materials in the late stage, which caused them to slightly miss out on us in terms of core success rate." After they received the sample questions I sent, the grade group head was shocked on the spot, and within an hour a substantial copyright purchase was wired into my account. 3 days later, the city's ultimate unified mock exam was held as scheduled. In the exam room, the Class 1 students held their papers, their faces turning from relaxed to deathly pale in an instant, because they were shocked to discover that the high-scoring Axis questions that occupied 7/10 of the exam and the new experimental questions, whose core logic and solving ideas were exactly the same as those poison questions I had discarded into the wastebasket a few days ago, and they, trusting Grace, did not read a single word. 3 days later, the results were announced. In the lobby of the teaching building, the red list was crowded with people. In the first class's seating area, cries rang out. Several ordinarily top students even collapsed to the floor. This time, in the full mock exam, the once top class suffered a collective Waterloo. The class average dropped by a whole 40 points. And they were left far behind by the ordinary classes that they usually looked down on. Meanwhile, Yutsai High School, which had previously stood with us, had completely absorbed the predictions I provided, and the rate of coming up with high scores shot up by 15 percentage points, taking 9 of the city's top 10 positions. The only exception was me. I still achieved a score close to perfection, ranking first in the city. Grace looked at her own score on the red list, which had fallen out of the top 200 in the school, and her body trembled violently. She charged toward me like crazy, pointing at my nose and shouting, "It's you! You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? You already knew the question types. Why didn't you force us to read them? You watched us fall into the trap with your own eyes. You're too cruel." I paused, glancing coldly at her, and at the eyes behind her jealous to madness, remorse dripping with blood. "The petition you signed, the prints you pressed, the boycott book you delivered." I pulled out a photo of the boycott petition I had taken at the time, waved it in front of the whole class. "The path you chose to walk, even if you have to kneel, you must finish it." I put away my phone and walked past Grace, brushing her shoulder. June 7th, the first day of the college entrance examinations. At 5:30 in the morning, the sky rolled with ink-black clouds, rain pounded down in torrents, and dense raindrops smashed onto the asphalt, rising into a white misty spray. Because of the sudden extreme weather, many city roads were flooded and collapsed, and the urban traffic network was already half paralyzed at dawn. At 6:50 a.m., I stood with a black umbrella, arriving on time at the side service road west of the school gate. Due to the floodwaters, buses and taxis had long since stopped running, and the entrance was packed with private cars of anxious parents. The honks blared one after another, blocking the entire road, just as everyone and the examinees were sweating with worry. A luxurious double-decker bus with a huge banner reading Class 1, 3rd year, Special Love Bus for the Gaokao parted the floodwaters and slowly stopped at the most conspicuous spot by the school gate. The door opened, and the campus Belle Grace, in an impeccably white dress, stood at the door, holding a megaphone, shouting to the classmates waiting anxiously in the rain all around. "Classmates, because today's rainstorm has closed the roads, my father has specially mobilized his group's private connections to charter this free exam bus with police escort. Class 1, everyone, show your student IDs and board immediately. We'll take the VIP green channel straight to the exam venue." The Class 1 students, who had been freezing and shaking in the rain, burst into a collective roar of desperate relief. "Oh my God, Grace, you're basically our savior. Fantastic." Follow Grace, truly trustworthy in moments like these. Being the heiress of the group, dozens of Class 1 students surged toward the bus as if seeing Noah's Ark. Grace stood at the door, smiling softly, calmly arranging each person to board. I stood with my umbrella, my expression calm, and passed by the bus, heading toward the high-clearance off-road rideshare pickup point I had reserved a day earlier through a special channel. "Stop." Grace's sharp eyes immediately spotted meth lone person outside the crowd. She instantly turned off the megaphone, walked to the bus door with high heels, and looked down on me from above. In those eyes, the exquisitely made-up gaze, there was vengeance and mockery. "You, a genius. Don't you have a car to get to the exam?" Grace's voice rose a few decibels to ensure everyone in the cabin could hear. "Sorry, this bus is fully sponsored by my family. Based on the negative influence you've caused the class, and the unanimous protest signed by the whole class, this bus does not welcome you alone." The windows rolled down, and those who were already seated in the warm cabin with hot coffee in hand stuck their heads out, faces twisted with unmasked schadenfreude and mockery. "Haha, selfish pig. Justice is coming for you, isn't it? Keep playing the moral high ground. Today you deserve to repeat. Grace, don't bother with him. Cold-blooded animals like him deserve to walk in the rain to the exam. Without us, no matter how good your grades, you won't even get into the exam room. What use will you have as the top student?" Facing the rain of taunts and the roar of thunder, I didn't even flinch to hold the umbrella. I stopped, watched Grace through the heavy rain, and the one or two familiar distorted smiles in the cabin. Without saying a word, not showing a trace of anger, I simply calmly redirected my gaze, turned, and walked toward the front 50 meters ahead to the Humming with Life Grand Expedition SUV waiting in the blazing headlights. Bah! Stubborn dead duck, let's see how you cry later. Grace, seeing I had no agitated reaction, found it boring, scoffed, and issued an order to the driver. Driver, all of Class 1 is here. Close the doors. We're leaving. With a dull thud, the luxury bus's heavy electric door slammed shut behind me. I sat in the back seat of the SUV, pulled off the damp sleeve, and nodded to the driver calmly. Driver, let's go. Avoid the Central Cross River Bridge. Take the Outer Ring elevated road. All right. Little brother, today the whole city is jammed, but our car has a high chassis. Taking the outer ring is longer but definitely safer. The driver stepped on the accelerator, and the SUV surged smoothly into the rain curtain. In the rearview mirror, I watched the luxury bus, packed with a whole class of students, all excited to take a shortcut, its passengers grinning with delight. A cold arc touched my lips. In a past life, during this storm, I also tried to board that bus. But Grace publicly humiliated and pushed me off. I had to sprint 5 kilometers through the rain, arriving at the exam venue with my right hand severely frozen. I couldn't even clearly write a single character in the first subject of Chinese, and I was immediately failed. In this life, I will not get on that bus again. The heavy rain continued to slam against the car windows, the wipers already on their maximum setting. I sat in the back seat of a steady SUV, my phone screen slightly bright, showing a real-time traffic map of the city's major arteries. The red lines indicating congestion spread through the city like a plague, and the most glaring dark red stripe ran right across the essential route to the Examthi Central Cross River Bridge, the bridge we must cross. At this moment, the luxury courtesy bus carrying all the students of Class 1, senior year, was blinking hazard lights and jammed in the exact center of the Cross River Bridge. The previously cheerful and relaxed atmosphere inside the bus had, after being stationary for a full 20 minutes, finally been replaced by a suffocating fear. Driver, why aren't we moving yet? It's 8:20 now. The exam starts promptly at 9, and we'll be 15 minutes late if we don't get in. A few girls in the front row started trembling, constantly patting the seats in front of them. The driver was sweating profusely, frantically honking the horn and shouting toward the window. There are 2 private cars blocking the road right in front of us. The way is completely blocked. Grace's face had turned pale, but she remained composed and stepped forward to reassure everyone. Everyone stay calm. My dad said this car has special clearance. I'll call him right now. However, before Grace could dial, several dozen men in raincoats, visibly agitated, suddenly charged out in front of the Cross River Bridge. They carried iron chains and banners, climbed over the guardrails, and headed straight for the luxury bus with a clear objective. Boom, boom, boom. Heavy chains slammed against the bus doors and windows, producing a terrifying, bone-chilling clamor. Pay back the money. Ruthless debtor Grace's father. The debt must be repaid. If the project funds aren't settled today, none of you will leave. Banners fluttered in the rain, scribbled in black paint with debt collection phrases directed at Grace's father's group. This wasn't ordinary traffic congestion at all. It was a carefully planned encirclement by the creditors. They had already learned that Grace's family would mobilize a luxury car under the group today, and had laid a trap on this inescapable Cross River Bridge. Ah! A piercing scream erupted inside the bus. The Class 1 students had never faced such a scene. The glass was crushed into spiderweb cracks, and a few timid girls burst into tears on the spot. Grace, what on earth is going on? Why are they smashing our bus? Aren't you saying this is a VIP green channel? Why are these people calling your dad a deadbeat? Facing the terrified and angry questions from the whole class, Grace slumped in her seat, and the phone slipped from her hand to the floor. A news pop-up just happened to appear on the screen. This morning, a well-known local real estate group formally declared bankruptcy due to insolvency. The chairman is untraceable. Her privileged status, her arrogant capital, collapsed completely in this moment. At the same time, the off-road SUV I was riding around the Outer Ring Highway, though detouring by 10 extra kilometers, moved unhindered. At 8:40, the car finally stopped steadily at the first exam site, the main gate of City No. 1 High School. I opened my black umbrella, my shoes stayed clean and dry, and I calmly swiped through the security checkpoint. The broadcast was playing the instructions for test taker entry, and the proctors checked each student's admission ticket with severe expressions. I found my seat, placing a 2B pencil and a neutral pen neatly on the desk. 8:55. Only 5 minutes left before the start of the exam. On the Cross River Bridge, Class 1 students had completely lost their minds. They tried to push open the doors to escape, but the doors were locked tight by the iron chains outside. No matter how much the class officers cried and begged, the creditors outside remained unmoved. In the cutthroat world of business, a high school student's status offers no protection. 9 o'clock sharp. The exam officially begins. Start distributing the papers. With the proctor's command, a crisp bell rang out across the testing site. I took the test paper, skimmed the question types. The core logic matched exactly the forecast papers I had previously sold to Yutsai High School. I twisted off the pen cap and began to write. The scratching sound of the nib filled the room. 9:15. Ring, ring, ring. That was the final bell signaling the end of late entry for the Gaokao. According to national exam rules, after 15 minutes from the start, late examinees are not allowed to enter the exam hall. Almost at the same moment the bell faded. Outside the iron doors of the City No. 1 high school testing site, there came the screech of brakes and a chorus of despairing cries. The students of Class 1 had, with the help of traffic police, finally rushed to the exam hall at the last moment. They were soaked to the skin by the heavy rain, their clothes smeared with mud, their hair plastered to their faces, looking as pitiful as beggars on the street. Let us in. We were stuck in traffic. Someone clearly blocked the road on purpose. Please. This is the Gaokao. I've studied for 3 years. Let me in to finish the Chinese exam. A dozen or so students clung to the iron gate, crying their hearts out. However, the uniformed security guards and the proctors, expressionless, stood firm inside the iron gate. The rule is the rule. If you are late by more than 15 minutes, you are not allowed to enter. Please do not disrupt other examinees. Please leave immediately. The iron gate did not move an inch. Grace sat in the pooled water outside the exam site, letting the dirty water soak through her expensive white dress. She turned her head and looked at the quiet exam hall inside the teaching building through the iron gate, a trace of despair flashing in her eyes. First subject, Chinese. All of Class 3 of the Senior Year 1. Scores invalidated to 0. The Gaokao ended 3 days later. For the majority of those in Class 1 of Senior Year, these 3 days were a continuous dagger scudding into the just ordeal. Missing the first subject Chinese exam felt like a boulder pressing down on their chests, causing the following subjects to collapse one after another. And on the night when the last English exam ended, a meticulously planned online mobbing quietly erupted on local forums and short video platforms. In a pinned hot search video, Grace sat in front of the camera with pallid face and red, swollen eyes. The mud from that day's heavy rain clung to her clothes, and her voice hoarse as she cried out, "We just want to take the exam on time as students." I kindly chartered a bus to take everyone, but that genius scholar in our class who has won countless scholarships clearly rides a high-end car, clearly knows the debt collectors ahead are blocking the road, yet said nothing to warn us. He watched the futures of more than 40 classmates get ruined just to reduce the number of competitors. What good is a genius who has no basic empathy to society? Beneath the video, a petition co-signed by dozens of classmates followed, accusing her. Public opinion, propelled by keyboard warriors, spiraled out of control in an instant. Oh my gosh, this is so selfish and so vicious. Recommend the Education Bureau cancel this high-IQ antisocial personality's Gaokao score. Scheming to ruin the entire class just to win the top score. Dox him. In just 2 hours, my name, phone number, and exam number were maliciously exposed. The harassment calls and insulting messages flooded my phone at dozens per second, the vibrations never stopping. I watched those vicious words on the screen without a flicker of emotion. I casually answered a call, pressed the record button, and immediately heard the furious roar of the class sports captain. "Harry, selfish bastard. Are you satisfied now? I'm ruined. You just wait. Everyone on the internet is cursing you. You'll never be able to lift your head again in this life. Finished already?" I asked calmly, before he could spit out another dirty word. I hung up. Then I opened the computer and logged into the clarification homepage that I built myself and that was hosted on the official Fu Talent High School website server. The whole internet was waiting for my response, and my reply consisted of 3 completely unedited original audio-visual evidences. The first video shows the bus's dashcam footage and interior recording from that day the bus was free to use. In the footage, before the bus leaves, Grace stands at the door and arrogantly shouts through the loudspeaker, "This bus welcomes no one but you, dead duck. Keep talking tough and see how you cry later." followed by the classmates' shrill jeers. This segment slaps all sympathizers in the facettes, not that I wouldn't take them along. It's that they themselves closed the door. The second piece of evidence is an asset penetration report stamped by a professional auditing firm, plus a recording of Grace's father's call on the night of June 6th. In the recording, Grace's father coldly instructs the secretary, "Tomorrow, send that private bus to pick up the students. The bigger the disturbance, the better. Those debt collectors will block the way. The police will handle them, which will give the group time to relocate assets." The truth comes to light. There was never any loving school bus. This was Grace's father using the futures of the entire class as shields. A shameless plot to delay bankruptcy liquidation. The third piece is Grace transferring $50,000 to a public relations company hours earlier to purchase online Water Army followers and to smear my message pay bills and chat screenshots. 3 ironclad proofs, like 3 heavy bombs, exploded mercilessly online. The public opinion instantly underwent a terrifying reversal. The netizens who had been wildly attacking me initially, upon realizing the truth that they were being used as tools, saw their anger instantly transform into a tsunami, counterattacking Grace and everyone in class 100,000 times over, using classmates as meat shields. "This woman is too vicious. Haha, this cracked me up. They wouldn't let someone else get on the bus. And now they're turning around saying others didn't rescue them. This is what the so-called privileged class deserves first class zero for them." The victim claims group originally set up by Class 1 was instantly overwhelmed by reports and abuses from righteous netizens all over the internet. Grace's personal account lost hundreds of thousands of followers within half an hour. And the backstage was filled with hundreds of thousands of messages telling her to get out of academia. Late that night, the official statement from City No. 1 High School was released. In view of some students from Class 1 suspected of online violence, malicious defamation of others, and involving major commercial disputes, the school will handle the matter seriously and cooperate actively with police investigations. After the online public opinion backlash, the entire management team of Class 1 fell into paralysis. In order to salvage the so-called admission KPI at the last moment, the homeroom teacher David, who was already suspended and under investigation, quietly posted a notice in the small class group that he and I were no longer in. "Students, although this Chinese literature exam absence has damaged everyone's total scores, the teachers will never give up on anyone. After much effort on my part, I have specially contacted an overseas top university's advanced direct admission pre-clearance channel located in China. By paying 200,000 in joint training fees, you can be admitted directly without an exam. There are only 30 places. At 2:00 p.m. we will sign the contract behind closed doors at the Riverfront Hotel's banquet hall." This message was like a last lifeline for the despairing Class 1 students. In a previous life, David exploited the anxious psychology of students and parents, colluding with shady offshore universities and middlemen, siphoning nearly $10 million from the class, and then vanishing without a trace. Those who believed him only discovered their lives ruined when they held a counterfeit diploma not recognized by the Ministry of Education and were turned away by potential employers. At 1:45 p.m., I stood in a cafe opposite the Riverfront Hotel. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see Class 1 students and parents lining up, tightly clutching bank cards and contracts, their eyes filled with a frenzied desperation as they walked into the banquet hall one by one. Grace and her mother were among them, the former arrogance gone, their eyes filled with a latest-stage hypocrisy clinging to the last thread of dignity. I did not attempt to persuade anyone on site, because I knew that for these people blinded by greed and luck, verbal warnings would only invite a new wave of ridicule. I chose the most realistic and decisive method to deliver a fatal blow. I opened my notebook and pulled up all the underlying data I had scraped in recent days through legal web crawlers from the State Foreign Affairs Regulation Network and the Administration for Industry and Commerce. The so-called Ivy League-affiliated prestigious school that David boasted about was merely a shell consulting firm registered in the Cayman Islands 3 days ago, with the domestic liaison company's head being the name of David's own brother. This was a complete contract fraud ring. I packaged all the business chain diagrams, cross-border fund transfer letters of intent, and the recent bank statements showing frequent commission deposits into one 40-page whistleblower dossier. Then I directly opened the online emergency reporting portals of the city's Public Security Bureau's Economic Crimes Division and the city's TV station's legal channel. Submissions suck. As full. At this moment, there were only 2 hours left before the 5:00 p. a.m. Deadline for college application submissions. In the hotel's banquet hall, David stood at the podium, baiting the students with a last-ditch pep talk, spitting slogans. Students, if you sign this contract, you'll receive your admission letter next month. For the college application system, you can just fill in a safety net there. After all, this is internal targeting and not going through the big network system. Parents scrambled to sign the contracts. The beeping of the POS machines filling the air. Signed. My son has a seat to read a book now. Thank you, Mr. David. You're truly a savior for Class 1. Just as Grace's mother trembled, ready to press her fingerprint on the final transfer form for 20,000 more. The heavy doors of the banquet hall were suddenly kicked open. Hands up. All of you remain seated where you are. Dozens of plainclothes economic crime police, with the assistance of the City Bureau's criminal police, instantly sealed off all exits. Following them were reporters from the city TV station's in-depth investigation team, holding long guns and flashbulbs flashing wildly. David's smile froze on his face in an instant. He instinctively tried to slip toward the backstage door, but two plainclothes officers, who were already hidden there, pounced on him and pressed him hard against the podium. David, you are suspected of colluding with foreign illegal organizations and using false school qualifications to commit a huge contract fraud. The amount has reached $8 million. This is an arrest warrant. Come with us. The handcuffs clicked crisply, locking David firmly in place. The parents and students in the audience were completely stunned. Officer, how could this be fraud? This is a prestigious school's early batch. Where is our money? My 200,000 just went through. The lead officer took the microphone, his voice sternly resounding through the hall. Everyone, wake up. There's no such thing as an internal early batch directive. This is a pure shell company. If not for our informant who provided the complete funding chain evidence in advance, after the volunteer filling deadline at 5:00 this afternoon, you wouldn't just fail to get your money back, you'd lose the chance to fill in legitimate college entrance examination choices entirely, and your chances would be wiped out. This sentence struck like a heavy hammer, dragging everyone present into an abyss of despair. On the big screen, reporters from the TV station had already started to air the penetration report of the company that I anonymously provided. It clearly showed that their money, in the first second after swiping the card, had already been packaged and prepared to transfer overseas. Boom! The scene instantly erupted into chaotic, out-of-control frenzy. Parents rushed toward the podium, tearing at David's clothes, screams and curses filling the air. You beast, David, give back our hard-earned money. There's only an hour left before the college entrance volunteer deadline. What are we going to do now? Class 1 students desperately took out their phones, seeing the system count down with less than an hour left. Because of their previous blind confidence, they hadn't studied any formal volunteer options at all. Now faced with densely packed school codes, their minds went blank, and in extreme panic they could only fill in choices at random. I closed my laptop, picked up my coffee, took the last sip, then stood up and left the coffee shop. The college entrance examination volunteer admissions process was completely shut down in the midst of chaos, and Class 1 students submitted their choices in a panic. However, if their punishment only stays at the academic and future level, it cannot be considered a real liquidation. The suffering I endured in my previous life dragged my entire family to the edge of ruin. In this life, I will uproot their reliance on the financial level of reality. In late July, the college entrance exam results and the admission score lines for each batch were officially announced. With an almost perfect advantage, I indisputably won the province's top science student, just as the city's media were frantically looking for me to run a headline story. I was sitting in a private box of a high-end tea house in the city center, calmly watching the futures and equity trading terminal on the computer screen. The memories of my previous life not only gave me precise control over test questions, but also allowed me to grasp the financial trends of several core industries in the coming years. Grace, Harry, and Eva, the three families whose livelihoods depended on those family businesses, were now in a critically fragile financial situation after the previous blunders, money laundering investigations, and debt disputes. They attempted to apply for one last extension loan from the bank through a joint restructuring, and I had already preemptively used half a month ago all the national competition prizes I had earned from selling revision materials. plus angel investment funds prepaid by several top venture capital firms who were attracted by my research potential. To lay a trap in the capital market, I precisely shorted the stock of the holding company under Eva's mother, and together with the largest overseas creditor of Grace's father's group, bought all the underlying assets frozen during the big bridge siege at a very low price. Sir, all the short positions have been liquidated. The opposing defense funds have been reduced to zero 10 minutes ago. A professional financial broker's calm voice came from the headset. Start it. Enforce it. I picked up my teacup and spoke 5 words softly. On the morning of the results release day, at 10 o'clock, Class 1 students gathered at the school's guidance office to receive the final batch of documents. I changed into a clean, neat casual outfit and walked toward the guidance building smoothly. Before I entered, sharp arguing voices and cries could be heard from inside. Grace, Eva, and Harry, who had just been bailed and returned to school, were gathered around a computer screen. The screen displayed their miserable scores. Chinese 0 points, and after the later mental collapse, their total scores did not reach even the ordinary specialized program line. Impossible. How could this be? I clearly filled in a safety school. Eva stared at the system interface that showed no such person found. Filing failed due to careless reporting, and she almost went crazy. It's you, Grace. If it weren't for your broken car, how could we end up here? Harry kicked the desk leg violently, his eyes red as he shouted at Grace. Grace's face turned pale, unable to say a word, as they argued and shoved each other. The door to the guidance office was suddenly pushed open by several enforcement judges in court uniforms, followed by several armed court bailiffs. In the lead, the enforcement judge held a thick stack of legal documents stamped with a bright red seal, scanned the room with a cold gaze, and finally fixed his eyes on Grace, Eva, and Harry. Who here is Grace, Eva, and Harry? These are asset seizure and enforcement notices issued by the Intermediate People's Court of the city. The judge's voice echoed clearly in the cold guidance office. Eva paused, trembling, and asked, Judge, what do you want with us? This is a school. Given that the parents of the 3 parties are involved in enormous contracts fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, and malicious asset transfer, and the amount involved is huge. All of their legally owned and illegal property has been frozen by the court. The judge flung 3 lists of enforced debtors in front of them. From today, all your luxury cars, properties, and bank accounts will enter the judicial auction process. At the same time, as joint guarantors or beneficiaries of family assets, you have been legally placed on the list of dishonest debtors, restricting all high consumption. Boom! This sentence completely shattered their last line of defense. This means that they not only received a horrendously failing report card with 0 marks and lost their chance of further study, but on the same day, from being held in high regard as privileged rich kids to instantly becoming deadbeats burdened with massive debts and unable to even ride a high-speed train. No, don't take my house. I didn't sign. Eva went crazy trying to grab the document. Where is my dad? Where is my dad? Harry pulled at his hair, collapsing to his knees in despair. September 1st. The start of the academic year for national universities. The morning sunlight pierces through the thin mist and falls on the stone steel at the entrance of the century-old top-tier institution and acclaimed National Key University. The new student welcoming site fluttering with banners. The crowd noisy with excitement. I wear a clean white shirt, carrying only a simple suitcase. Under the enthusiastic crowd of senior students greeting new ones, I smoothly complete all enrollment procedures. As this year's undisputed top science student in the whole province, my name and photo have long been hung on the most prominent wall of outstanding freshmen at the school's main gate. 2 hours later, needing to submit an additional proof of origin for my student records, I take my file and walk to the government service hall located in the city center's bustling business district. September in the south still carries waves of heat in the air. On the district's huge LED screen, the city's outstanding youth scientific and technological innovation achievements are being displayed, and the leading face is none other than mine. I put away my phone, ready to cross at the pedestrian crossing. At this moment, at the entrance of a cheap gig economy market on one side of the hall, a sharp argument and shoving erupted, breaking the din. Hurry up. 1 box of goods for 2. If you don't want it, get out. There are many people queuing behind you. A gang boss wearing a vest, holding a registry, roared at several shabby, sweaty young temporary workers in front of him. Boss, We've moved 50 boxes already. Can you settle the morning pay first? We're really short of lunch money, a hoarse voice with a hint of crying sounded from the crowd. I stop in my tracks and look toward the source of the voice. At the muddy, stink-filled recruitment booth stand 3 utterly ravaged figures. Eva wears a faded, obviously too large cheap t-shirt. Her previously delicate nails have long been worn bloody by hard labor, and she is pleading desperately with the boss. Behind her, Harry bears a heavy load of construction debris. Once strong, his body now looks gaunt, his spine bent under life's heavy weight. Staring numbly at the ground, in the far corner, the former high and mighty campus beauty Grace, now wearing worn-out protective gloves, crouches among dirty water, wiping discarded tiles with a rag. Her once proud long hair is casually tied back, speckled with dust, and her face, besides a thick layer of oil and dirt, shows not a trace of former arrogance. Their parents imprisoned, assets fully frozen and liquidated by the court, branded as untrustworthy debtors. They not only lost chances for further education or repeating a year but also must bear the family's perpetual joint debt, with no social skills whatsoever. They can only sell their physical labor in this lowest tier of the gig market to scrounge a few dozen for meals each day. Perhaps sensing someone's gaze, Grace awkwardly wipes the sweat from her forehead and instinctively lifts her head. In that instant, her gaze collided hard with mine across the street. Grace is struck by thunder. The rag in her hand clatters into the dirty water. She stares fixedly at my immaculate white shirt and the gleaming top university badge pinned to my chest under the sunlight. It's you. Grace's voice trembles, and extreme despair and fear instantly swallow her. Hearing the disturbance, Eva and Harry also abruptly lift their heads. When they see me clearly, their faces lose all color. That kind of jealousy, regret, and powerlessness that seems to seep from their bones transforms into a silent suffocation that chokes their throats. In the previous life, they rode in luxury cars and trampled me, soaked through and missing the college entrance exam, and jeered that I was the trash of the bottom. And in this life, I stand at the pinnacle of the era, while they have fallen completely into the mud. I look at them, my expression as tranquil as a mirror without ripples. I do not linger, I do not sneer. Not even a single extra look is bestowed upon them. To me now, they are nothing more than insignificant dust that has long been washed clean in this rushing river of fate forward. I turn and face the noon sun, pull my suitcase, and stride toward my brilliant future. The wind blows from behind, carrying away all the dirty old grievances,